Japan's nuclear meltdown is what everybody is talking about, but there is another meltdown that people should be concentrating on if you really want to prepare, if you really want to make a difference and be a life raft for someone else, and that is the economy. Japan has the largest amount of debt in the world. Their debt, which is caused by giving free stuff, not necessarily in the case of Japan, but free stuff, an older generation that was promised stuff, it's now 226% of GDP. Ours is just only about 100%. Japan, when you have a debt, because you're giving out free stuff, you need to sell bonds, our treasury bonds, Japan's bonds. Those are loans to buy free stuff. China or we would come in and buy bonds. They buy our bonds. So we can buy more free stuff and give it to people that we can't afford. That's like a credit card. That's what the bonds are. There are credit cards. Japan's bond market is the second largest in the world. We're the biggest. More importantly, they are the second largest foreign holder of U.S. treasuries. Those are our credit cards. So they have our credit cards. They have been buying. They were still buying our treasuries, giving us more money so we can buy more free stuff and give it away through the end of last year. But let's take a look at what's happening over in Japan now. And this has been done before with Japan. They're going to need to start spending money at home, not buying investments, not buying our junk bonds. After the Kobe earthquake in 1995, that's exactly what they did, because they needed to spend 3.4 trillion yen on relief and rebuilding efforts. Today, they just manufactured, what was it, 15 billion yen, and just dumped it into the system. Japan is about to be reset. They need to build new structure. And because they've done it before, we know they'll stop buying our treasuries. The question is, will they sell our treasuries? Because they don't have the money to fix their infrastructure, so they start dumping our treasuries because they need that money to fix what was broken there. It gets worse from here. I mean, let the other people cover the meltdown of the nuclear power plant. That's bad. This one affects the entire world. We told you last week the world's biggest bond fund, PIMCO, dropped all of its U.S. debt from its fund. So all of the treasuries, the world's biggest private bond fund, said, yeah, we're going to cancel America's credit cards. We're getting rid of those. Okay. Now, the guy who made that decision, his name is Bill Gross. He manages the fund. He's not a schlub. He was named the fund manager of the decade because they outperform everybody else. News reports now are saying others might follow PIMCO. Really? They might follow? Might? PIMCO runs the world's largest private bond fund, more successful than anybody else. When the world's largest anything says, I don't think we're going to do that, do you think everybody else listens? You remember the E.F. Hutton ad? This is exactly what we told you to watch for with George Soros, because George Soros does this right before an economic collapse. He always says, well, my hedge fund, nothing wrong, but I just don't think it's a good investment. I'm getting out of their bonds. And because people listen to George Soros, they say, well, he must know something that I don't know. PIMCO is 10 times Soros of the bond market. The clock has started. Let me show you this chart from PIMCO. This is who bought, 50% foreign. We bought the rest, 10% of the Fed. Now, according to PIMCO, 70% is being bought. Our debt, our credit cards being bought by us. With what? And 30% foreign. So now, if Japan isn't buying, or if they sell, what happens? Who will buy them in the future? It won't be Japan. The scary part is that there are credible people out there now talking about inflation as a good thing. If you have debt, you need credit cards. So you go to a bank, you go to a country, and they give you loans, credit cards. But if nobody will give you that, you have to start printing your own money. Inflation is what you can't do. When you want to buy something, you go to your basement and print it up. No, you can't do that, but the government can. They say, according to several articles now, people are seriously looking into inflation as a way out. Something that financial advisor John Maudlin wrote about in his newsletter. Quote, given the powerful deflationary forces in the world, inflation will stay low in the near term. This gives some comfort to mainstream economists who think we can create inflation to solve the debt problem in the short run. In other words, make your dollars worthless to pay off the debt. A secondary warning, what's happening in Japan. They are molding it and reshaping the world closer to their heart's desire. Socialists, the Fabian socialists, remodeling and remolding the world. I showed you in the beginning that Soros is trying to sway what is happening with the nuclear power plants. We showed you that China is now, strangely, trying to convince people that an ally is Japan. But what does all of it mean? What does it mean to us? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to your bank account? Well, I want to show you here the various countries where preceding hyperinflation, what was happening. Look at this. Before hyperinflations, France, Bolivia, Brazil, Poland, Germany, Japan, and the United States. Now, Japan is slightly over 40%, and here's where we are. At 45%. Where are we? There we are, 45%. Who's going to buy our debt? Japan's central bank injected I thought it was billion, but it is trillion, isn't it? $1 trillion, or trillion yen. That's $183 billion right into the market to stabilize their economy. The nuclear meltdown story is the one everybody is talking about. But the one that really truly affects every human on Earth is the possibility of the global economic or bond meltdown. That is the threat. In the deeply religious West Bank settlement of Itamar, over the weekend, terrorists broke into the home of an Israeli family, Ruth and Udi Fogel. This happened on Friday. It was a night of bloodshed that Charles Manson couldn't have imagined. It has left the Fogel family, friends, and all of Israel in shock and devastated. But it seems to me, and maybe it's just because of the horrible tragedies that are happening in Japan, that people aren't seeing it, but it is worth stopping for a moment and recognizing that the mother and father of 6 were butchered to death, along with 3 of their 6 children. 2 boys aged 11 and 3, and a 3-month infant girl. I have the photos of the murder scene. I can't show them to you on television, but I have 2 small children. What kind of monster can butcher an infant, a small child? According to the reports, the terrorists broke through the Fogels' window. They didn't notice a 6-year-old boy who was asleep on the couch, went right to the bedroom where they slashed the throats of Dad and his newborn baby girl. Ruth, his wife, was stabbed at the entrance of their bathroom. Evidence looks like she tried to fight the terrorist. She lost. The killers then went on to slash the throat of the 11-year-old son, who was reading in bed. Thank God they didn't notice the 2-year-old asleep in his bed. But they went on to butcher the 3-year-old. 2 stabs right in the heart. After that, the killers locked the door and exited through a window and escaped. Well, here comes the 12-year-old, the daughter. She returned home that night. She found the door locked and asked her neighbor to help her get in. The neighbor woke up, the 6-year-old, sleeping on the couch by calling through a window. The neighbor then went home. Only when the young girl entered the bedrooms and saw these, except not in picture form, she realized her family had been brutally butchered. She ran from the house screaming. There is great and powerful evil and darkness. But if you think this is evil, wait until I tell you how the story ends. Next. In the 1960s, I was too young to remember Charlie Manson, but Bernadine Dorn talked about, and they stabbed the pregnant one in the belly. That's Bill Ayer's wife. Powerful evil. I just told you the story of what happened in Israel this weekend, and the killing of this family. Pictures that I can't show you on television. It is horrific what they did. But if you think that's bad, now let me show you the pictures that I can show you on television. The reaction of the Gaza residents. I find this even more disturbing. After terrorists slaughtered a family, innocent babies, they passed out candies. One resident said the joy was natural, quote, a natural response to the harm settlers inflict on the Palestinian residents in the West Bank. The same people that danced in the streets to celebrate the deaths of 3,000 Americans on 9/11. We are living in times that I believe God will judge each of us for what we do and do not do. And if it's not God, it will at least be historians. I will go back to say what I said at the beginning of the year. There is great and powerful evil, but there is great and powerful light as well. Get into the light and stand in it, because evil is growing rapidly. And I started telling you tonight that the New York Times said that I was too gloomy to watch and apocalyptic. Well, so be it. It's the truth. The truth has no agenda. You watch the rest of the week. From New York, good night, America.